Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, yesterday I went to the Reginald F. Lewis Museum here in Baltimore. For those of you who don't know, that's an African American museum. And I saw two documentaries. The first documentary was Black Memorabilia, the second documentary was Ethnic Notions. And after watching the documentaries, I went to the exhibit. They had an exhibit on hatred, and the two documentaries basically dealt with blackface and the negative stereotypes of black people, the whole minstrel image of black people. The film Ethnic Notions highlighted various stereotypes of black people, including the stereotype of the Coon, of the Sambo, of the Mammy and the uncle and the brute. And the film Ethnic Notions also touched upon how these negative stereotypes continue today. And one of the points that they highlighted was the fact that these negative stereotypes served a purpose. They were designed to rationalize and justify the oppression of black people. They were designed to justify slavery. For instance, they depicted black people as happy slaves, as naturally docile and obedient, and they also made it seem as if slavery saved black people, as if slavery helped save black people from their savage, beast-like nature. So that was one stereotype that they perpetuated. And then after emancipation, they perpetuated the image of black people as dangerous, as black men in particular as dangerous, as brutes. They depicted the black man as some kind of sex-crazed predator who lusted after white women. And one thing that stands out in mind, one thing, that image that really stands out is this image from the film Birth of a Nation, where you have this white actor in blackface chasing a white woman, trying to rape a white woman. And this white woman decides to jump off a cliff in order to avoid the Negro brute. So these are the types of negative images that they had. And in that film, Birth of a Nation, they depicted black people as stupid, as trifling, as conniving. They have black people suppressing white voters. They have black people in Congress with their feet kicked up on the tables, eating chicken and watermelon, acting like complete buffoons and fools. So those are the types of images that they talked about in Ethnic Notions. And again, they talked about how these images in certain ways and negative stereotyping continues today. And that made me just reflect upon this stuff. And before I go a little bit further, I want to talk about one thing that really stood out in the exhibit, and that's the image that they had of black children. They had black children depicted as disposable creatures, as if black life had zero value. They had black children depicted as alligator bait. Just like you use when you go fishing, you use worms or you use like minnows or some other kind of bait to catch fish. Well, they were literally using black children as bait to catch alligators. That's how they depicted black children. And also, I saw this book that they had featured in this exhibit. And also, this book was discussed in Ethnic Notions, a book called 10 Little Niggers, basically telling the stories of how 10 children died. And instead of it being like some tragic story in the minds of these people that wrote the book, it was like a story that was like a comedy. These people were amused by the death of black children. That's how demented society was at that time. But the thing that's odd is like right after going to that museum and seeing those documentaries and looking at the exhibit, I go on Facebook today and I see this image of Serena Williams. And you all know who Serena Williams is. She's the superstar tennis player, who's dominating women's tennis right now. And they have this image of Serena Williams that reminded me of those negative images that I saw in Ethnic Notions. It reminded me of those negative images of black people that I saw in Black Memorabilia. It reminded me of those negative images that I saw in the exhibit. And I'm just going to break it down. The minstrel image of black people depicted black people as subhuman and as grotesque. Those images were designed to make black people hate themselves and to make white society hate black people, to make white society desensitized when it comes to black people. So they depicted black people with huge, bulging white eyes, practically popping out of their heads, with enormous red, bright lips, ultra dark skin, and huge noses, and super kinky, knotted, messed up hair, unkempt hair. That's how they depicted black people. And as I look at this image of Serena Williams, it reminds me of those same images that I saw in Ethnic Notions. She has wide lips, huge lips in this image. Her hair is looking crazy, much like how the minstrel had the unkempt hair. She's virtually obese. She's much bigger in this cartoon than she is in real life, reminding us of the minstrel image, of the Mammy image in particular, where they depicted black women as obese, where they depicted black women as masculine, as unattractive. And you see all of that embodied in this image of Serena Williams. Another thing that has to be talked about is the image of the black brute. I talked about that briefly, how they depicted black men in particular as dangerous. And I think that in some ways, that type of image is reflected in this picture of Serena Williams. Just like they feared black political power, these people fear black people dominating a white enclave. Here you have a sport of tennis, which for the longest time was reserved for wealthy white people. It was a white enclave, just like these exclusive communities around the country, just like Rowling Park here in Baltimore, an exclusive white enclave. And now they have a black woman in that enclave dominating it. And they don't like that. So they are perpetuating this negative image of this black woman as a brute, as somebody that's uncouth, uncivilized, acting a complete fool, completely emotional, irrational. That's the image that they present in this cartoon. So it's like a combination of these negative stereotypes, and it is sad and sickening to see this type of imagery in 2018. It is a step way backwards. Here we are all these years after Jim Crow, and we still have these negative type of images presented of black people. And the sad thing is, this is not some cartoon from a racist website, a blatantly racist white supremacist website. It's not a cartoon from the KKK or the Nazis or skinheads or even the alt-right. It is a cartoon that comes from a major publication in this country. And it's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace that we have these types of images here. And one thing that I have to talk about in this cartoon is just the message that it raises. It has the white referee basically saying, well, can you just let her win? Can you just let Serena Williams win so she won't have these tantrums? Suggesting that Serena Williams cannot win on the merits, that somehow she needs special treatment. And that reminds me of how these people view affirmative action, how they view black people. They view us as if we cannot achieve on our own, that we have to get some kind of special treatment in order to accomplish, in order to succeed, and all that kind of stuff. That's another subliminal message that's being projected in that cartoon. A message that feeds all these negative stereotypes about black people. And that's deeply problematic. And the problem is, they are depicting this woman in that way for standing up for herself during that game, for standing up to bad calls made by the referee in the game. Now, obviously, I don't condone somebody slamming a racket down, and we'll talk about that in a second, but or calling people names and all that kind of stuff. I don't condone all that kind of stuff. But to punish this woman, to depict her as some kind of savage and all that kind of stuff for expressing her opinions or her outrage, I just think that that's fundamentally wrong. I don't see these same kind of images of all these white men that have done similar things or even far worse things on the tennis court. I don't see that kind of stuff. Here you have a situation where this woman is speaking out about like gender bias within tennis. You have plenty of articles that have been written about how these white male tennis players are treated differently than women tennis players, and black women in particular. You got these white male tennis players who say all kinds of outrageous things to referees, that engage in all kinds of outrageous conduct on the court, but they don't receive, the same kind of harsh penalty that Serena Williams received. And that's fundamentally unfair. And it's a good thing that that woman called it out and she spoke on it. It's like double standards all around. Double standards when it comes to race and double standards when it comes to gender. Because when a man is, acting out, he's viewed as being assertive. He's viewed as being strong. He's viewed as having an alpha personality. But when it comes to a woman doing the same, she's viewed as a bitch. She's viewed as emotional, and she's penalized for that. And that's something that's fundamentally wrong that needs to be called out. So I want to address, this whole thing about equality and just about how Serena Williams responded. Again, I don't condone her conduct. I don't condone cursing out somebody. She didn't curse him out, but she called him names or whatever, called him a thief and a liar and all that kind of stuff. And I feel her, but I don't think that that's the best way to handle the situation. But at the same time, I don't think the sister should be crucified, just like how they crucified her in that racist cartoon and how they're making a mockery of her. I think that that's wrong. And I think that that's a manifestation of the kind of discrimination she's talking about when she's talking about sexism. And even though she doesn't want to address it, it deals with racism as well. I think that that's obviously an element here. But it's just interesting. Like I was reading this, brief excerpts from this article written by another tennis star, and she was basically saying that you shouldn't address the problem in that kind of way. You shouldn't take on the attitude that if white men can get away with something, I should be able to get away with something. And I think that that is a good point. And I'll post a link to the article in the description box. It's an opinion piece done by one of these tennis stars from back in the day. I encourage you all to read that article. But I agree with that. I mean, because in this society, we understand that this is a society that doesn't treat black people the same as white people. We are not given the benefit of the doubt. We don't have the same luxuries as these white people do. Because, that's the society that we live in. This is America. America has always been this way. And it will probably continue to be this way well after we're gone. So in the meantime, we have to be better than these people. Too often we have to strive much harder than these people to obtain the same level of recognition that these people obtain in order to accomplish the same things that they accomplish or even to go further than they do. We have to strive twice as hard. And I just think that we can't get caught slipping, man. We have to be better than these people, not say, well, oh, they can get away with this, so I should be able to get away with this. No, we should be better than them, twice as good as they are, if we want to achieve in this society. And Serena Williams understands this. I mean, she has achieved the unimaginable. She's on the verge of breaking all kinds of records. And I wish her much success, and she's an inspiration to us all. It's just funny how things happen. Like after you had these positive images of her presented, in the Nike ads where they talk about how black girls are not supposed to play, black girls from Compton are not supposed to play tennis. They're supposed to own tennis and stuff like that. All these positive ads, like, the ad about how they could take away the superhero's costume, but they can't take away the superhero's powers. I mean, very positive ads. It's just odd that right after that, you would have this negative racist ad. And that brings me to this other point that I want to conclude on. And that's this: we have to voice our opposition to this kind of racism. We have to speak out loudly and clearly and demand that there be consequences for this type of racism. We should not tolerate these kinds of ads in papers. And the best way to voice our opposition is with our dollars, by refusing to support these types of publications. Just like they had boycotts back in the day against Birth of a Nation, the original film, we need to have boycotts against companies, newspapers, and other forms of media that put out these negative images of black people. And again, this is nothing new. We saw it when the Obamas were in the White House. They had these negative cartoons, again, hearkening back to the blackface images of black people, hearkening back to the Sambo image of black people. Enough is enough, and we have to stand up and support this sister, because this is nothing but blatant racism.